Hey, it's Paolo. Thanks for sticking with me so far, and by now you've probably heard me interview a couple of filmmakers on their experiences and approaches to storytelling. But if you're at all interested in hearing any of mine, I'm featured on the latest episode of another podcast entitled : You know, like the confused emoji, but spelled out, like : In it, we dig into some deep-rooted storytelling techniques I've personally uncovered from my own journeys in filmmaking, children's publishing, and of course, breaking, or break dancing, if you will. So, please give it a listen and download the latest episode of : now on iTunes and most podcast platforms. Welcome to The Small Break, a podcast that explores exactly how independent films are made. Each episode is an interview with a filmmaker who has written, produced, and found distribution for his or her first feature film. I'm your host, Paolo Batanga, and joining us on this third episode today, please welcome
Jean-Paul Su, director, writer, producer of Toto.
So for all of you guys listening out there, we are here in our motherland, Manila, Philippines. So this is a really cool episode right now. You're currently living in...
Right now I live in Los Angeles, but before that, when I migrated to the US, I lived in New York for the longest time, for over a decade, like 12, 13, 14 years.
Right. And I guess we're both back from the holidays, and I'm coming from New York too. So yeah, this is a very holiday episode, I guess.
Yes.
Whatever, call it what you will. Let's get into the movie. So Toto, I saw the film back in 2016 already. Oh my god. It was at the Philippine Consulate at a festival that I help organize there every year. And that was just I guess a week or two after you won the Audience Award at the Asian American International Film Festival. Am I right?
Yes.
Was that your premiere?
That was my New York premiere. Yeah. My world premiere happened in the Philippines, at the Metro Manila Film Festival, where we won 4 awards back then. And then after that, it traveled internationally to different festivals, mostly in North America. The last stop was at the Hawaii International Film Festival, and then
that was after New York.
After New York, and then from there, we did our European premiere at the Rome Independent Film Festival.
Okay,
in Italy.
Sweet. Okay, so you hit like the various parts of the globe. Just to try and recap the film as best as possible. Again, I saw it in 2016, but I believe Toto is a Filipino comedy dramedy about a lowly hotel porter in pursuit of his dreams of living in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah.
Am I missing like one time?
No. It's basically like, you know, the working class Filipino, yes, who blue collar worker who never finished college, but his family has a dream, especially the parents had a dream of like moving to the US for greener pasture, but of course, as like any Filipino or any Asian or any child in general, like we usually like try to fulfill the dream of our parents. Their unfulfilled dreams becomes our transferred dreams, and this is the type of journey that our protagonists take.
Right, and you know, like the parental aspect, the ancestral aspect definitely plays a big role in the film, if you go see it. Speaking of which, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I like to use this time to remind our audience, it's December 27th, 2017. Where can people around the world catch the film right now, if ever?
Right now, we are still finalizing some details for our international distribution. It'll go straight to digital platform internationally. It had its theatrical run in the Philippines in 2016, late 2016, and it's going on cable in the Philippines as well. Late this year up to next year. I think it'll have a New Year's Eve premiere.
Oh,
Yeah,
like
cable channel.
like in a few days.
Yes, in a few days. So, but internationally, it'll be coming out next year.
Sweet.
Like in all the, hopefully in all the major digital platforms. Yes.
Sure.
And we will be presenting the director's cut for that, because there is a separate cut that's exclusively for the Philippines, because of to try to appeal to the culture and everything, sensibilities. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, I'm sure we're gonna be touching up on such discrepancies throughout this interview.
Yes.
Sweet. Okay, I look forward to it. So let's get started. We're gonna take it way, way, way back. Where were you when you first found this project?
Okay. So to give a backstory for that, for the film, back then I was just a fresh transplant from New York to LA. So I got into the ABC directing program. So that's the catalyst for me to move to LA from New York. And back then, while I was doing the program, I was still doing my thesis for my master's program at NYU. I had a script back then for a feature, but I didn't feel like it was ready yet. So my co-writer, who was introduced to me by one of the professors, I met him, and then he showed me a script. Back then, it was of a different title, and I read it. It sparked my interest, although there's still a lot of things to be worked on. But it was still I think it was workable, and that's how I started.
What year was this again?
That was way back in 2014.
Okay, 2014.
Yeah, that's way back in 2014. And then when I agreed to it, when I agreed to direct the project, eventually I became a co-writer for the film, and I became the main producer for the film. So it's a domino effect for me. I don't know.
That's crazy. So it was really someone else's film that they were proposing to you, and then you ended up embodying it.
Yeah, basically embracing the whole project and almost making it like my baby.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah. So so again, you had written a feature that I'm sure you were passionate about, and you weren't quite ready with it. Did you know that? Did you expect that an opportunity like that, like someone coming forward to you with a script, was gonna happen, and that your first film would perhaps be someone else's? Or yeah.
No, I did not. I did not expect that. But it came to my lap, so just took the opportunity to learn from that. Also, given the scale of the project, in hindsight, it was a good first feature for me, because the feature that I was writing is actually much more elaborate, so it'll take more from me. And for a first-time feature filmmaker, I think Toto was just the right film for me at that point in time.
Yeah. And have you written, how many screenplays have you written? I know you're talking about your quote-unquote first feature, but was that your first screenplay also?
Yes, I've done a screenplay before that wasn't ready yet to be shot. I'm still I shelved it for now,
yeah.
But I'm going back to that because now I kind of figured already what to do with that project. And then Toto became a second screenplay that I co-wrote with my co-writer, and then I'm writing my third now, which went to Tokyo.
Tokyo Talents?
Yeah, Tokyo Talents. I pitched a project in Tokyo Talents, and that's my next film. It'll be a North American film.
This is so crazy. So you mean to tell me that the film that basically your first passion project is still kind of on the shelf and simmering a bit?
Yeah, simmering a bit. Like I'm it's hard to say what my passion project is because
Sure.
like I think every film that I make, whether it's a short or a feature, I try to put as much love to every project, and it needs a certain soul. You need to, give a part of your soul to the project. So yeah, so even like Toto is not an original screenplay that came from me that I had. It was a screenplay that I had to rewrite. I felt like it's almost like having an adopted baby and like taking that baby as your own, and
Yeah,
like, and
absolutely.
forgetting that it wasn't your baby.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Okay. So let's get into the writing then. What I love about this podcast situation right now is this is episode 3, and so far everyone's given me a different answer naturally, and I expect that to go on for a while. It's just a testament to how kind of diverse the film career experience could be for like all sorts of people. But in terms of rewriting, and needless to say, this is you're talking about like a straight up like page one rewrite. It's practically a completely new script. I want to know what kind of resources and support groups you had at your disposal. I think you said you were a co-writer. If did you have that other writer working with you throughout also, or
Well, initially, like, because I worked as a director, when you're a director for a feature, what the first thing you actually have to do is like just give notes to your writer. Just give notes to your writer and like how you see the film and how it should work better. Because reality is like writers will always look at the film, a screenplay differently than a director. Because director has to make sure that the script is shootable, and that the actors can perform those scenes, and it's a director's job to identify those loopholes in the story. So that's the first stage that I went with my co-writer for the project. And then from there, after I pitched all the ideas and I gave all my notes, he gave me a draft, a new draft that's like that incorporated all my notes and incorporated all my ideas. And from there, I had to like read it and do my pass for it from the structure point of view, from the dialogue, and also because like this half of the film is in Filipino and half is in English, like it's always crucial and like on how it'll be translated to Filipino. So aside from that, I had to translate all the Filipino, the English dialogue that has to be in Filipino into Filipino, and then translate it back to English.
yes,
So it's a different. It's an art on its own to be translating and subtitling and like re-translating again. So that's where sometimes it drags for me. Yeah, because I need to make sure that the tone and accessibility of the dialogue makes sense in an English language, in the English language, because like internationally that's the language that everyone will be seeing it on.
yeah. Sometimes I wonder, especially when I watch a lot of foreign films, and when I'm reading the subtitles and when they use idiomatic expressions, it works. Sometimes it works super well, and I just think to myself, I'm like, man, whoever did that translation, they totally knew what they're doing. They totally were gearing it towards like someone like me also who could appreciate it. So how long did the writing process take overall since you got on board?
I think from the point that the script came to me for a rewrite, it took me probably another 2 months to me to do a lot of rewrites before the shooting, and then while we're shooting, I'm still doing some rewrites based on what happens on set, like the limitations and everything. So I had to do some rewrites during the shoot itself as well.
Okay, wow. So I mean, this seems like a pretty high momentum project, which is damn. You found yourself in a good situation, but Granted, you certainly earned it because you were in that program. You've been working for a few years. Can we get like a bit of a background too on? So that was 2014. So what was your background in film so far?
Before that, before Toto, I I was already working in New York when I migrated to New York. I was already working in television. So pretty much like the bulk of my career up to the point I went to NYU was all about like television, reality shows, lifestyle magazine
Which
shows.
department?
I work in production. So I started out as a PA, and luckily in 2 weeks' time, my boss just like pulled me out and like tried me as an AE, as an assistant editor.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, they liked my work. I got to do some like editing for some segments for their shows, and then my boss heard that I also shoot. I'm also a DP and a shooter. I shoot for news for the Filipino channel and for the other ethnic networks. So they tried me as a cinematographer, as a shooter for their shows. So at one point, I was like juggling between projects. Some projects I was a shooter, some projects I was an editor. And then from that point on, they tried me as an assistant director for one of their shows, and then it progressed to being a writer, segment writer and director for some of their shows. And then I went to NYU. From NYU, I made a short film during my second year that luckily won the Best Asian American Film at the for the Directors Guild of America. Yeah. So after winning the DGA award, that pretty much opened a lot of doors for me. The ABC program came into play. I applied and I got into that, and the script came to me as well, and then a lot of projects came to me.
That's so crazy, man.
Yeah, I got to one. Yeah, I think after that I also got to work with an ad agency back in Singapore, and then it got shortlisted for the Cannes Lions. So those are the things that I was doing before I did Toto. Seeing like how Hollywood TV shows are done, that in itself, like the system, the process, actually helped me, because like I had tried adapting some of the process in making my feature film. Yeah, so that's how it happened. And before that, which is crucial actually, and actually really prepared me to do my feature film, was being an assistant director for Carlos Reina, a professor at NYU, a renowned film master in the Philippines, and one of my mentors. So I got the opportunity to be his assistant director for his comeback film, and
that was Harinang Tondo?
Yeah.
Oh, you were the AD.
Yeah, and because of that pretty much like gave me a sense of like how it is to shoot an independent film in the Philippines, and allowed me to ask myself, am I ready to shoot a feature film?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I am ready. Let's do it.
That's great. Yeah, because I was gonna ask, but you pretty much covered it. Whether you're intimidated because you're coming from such a kind of like, for lack of a better word, like a structured, like bureaucratic system in the U.S. And then doing an Indian, the Philippines, man, because we know how it is.
Yeah, so it's what I try to do is like mix together the best practices from both sides of the world, like best practices in the U.S. and like adapting it to the Philippine setting, and like finding like what's the strength of Filipino filmmakers, a Filipino crew and cast. That's how I was able to make my film, and that's how I was able to survive 17 shooting days.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is so important for me to hear, especially on a personal level, being Filipino American, and seeing sharing that vision of, okay, let's see how we can combine these two worlds. So was Toto a Philippine American co-production? or was it just Philippines?
Pretty much a Philippine-American co-production, but most of the funding came from the Philippines.
Okay.
Yeah, 90% of the funding came from the Philippines.
By the time the project got to you, how far was it in its funding?
Well, as I mentioned, like what I ended up becoming a producer for the film because when the project came to me, they did not have any funds. So I had to figure out a way to attract US investors or just whoever would want to support the film. And then on top of that, it's like looking for other funders. So I tried securing some grants, and also I set up like this fiscal sponsorship so that whoever donates money, they get it as a tax break for them. I did that through IFP and then Independent Film Project, and thank God they're very supportive. And from there, I reached out to every single person who actually donated money to my short film that won the DGA.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Because of that, because at least those people know the type of work that I've done, and they know that I will not waste their money. The challenge actually of first feature is like, even if you've accomplished a lot in the short form in television, it's still a different medium. People will still be wary of like investing in your project. So who's your go-to? Your family. And that's thank God my family was very supportive, and you know, they tried to band together and like put the fund for me as well. So that's
great.
Helped. Yeah.
I mean, you can always, I feel like in general family is either the first or last, or both, always there in the beginning and the end. But you did say that you found most of your investments in the Philippines. Were you an active part of that process?
Yes. Yeah, that's basically what I did mostly. Like I looked for funding here in the Philippines and in the US, and then aside from that, as a producer, I assembled my team. And thank God I have two very, very experienced and competent line producers who really helped me in like making sure the budget is contained, and that we'll be able to get the best price possible in every step of the way. And and also I think it also comes from the fact that I've worked with them before.
Oh, great!
On your short, that's very that's one thing very important to point out. They were the line producers of my mentor's film.
Oh, yes.
So when I made my film, I tried to reach out to them again. My mentor's wife, who I worked with before in my short, who was my actress in my short, and also the producer of my mentor's film, helped me as well, like vouched for me. And then my editor for my feature film is also the seasoned editor of my mentor.
Great.
So somehow that's why for me, like, it was always important to point out, like, my experience as an AD for that feature film, because that basically like allowed me to find my team for my first feature.
That's the best, like there are people you certainly trust because you have a history together. I think that the message here really is mentorship, apprenticeship, always a great way to go.
Yeah.
I'm personally interested in knowing what would you say your budget level and on American standards, what was your budget level?
On American standards, my budget is like a micro budget film.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's a micro budget film. But on the Philippine standards, it's actually, they call it main D, which is like mainstream budget meets independent film project budget. budget for an independent film with high production value.
Yes.
Nowadays, there are independent films are like funded in that scale, and then it's like 10 million pesos.
Right.
So that's the budget.
What was the dollar
That's the
wise?
production. So it's almost like $280,000.
Yes. When you tell a U.S. producer your budget is like 280K, they're like, what?
Yeah. So it's really it's small. That's just a production. It doesn't account for all the deferred payments, like for the director, for the writer, for the producers.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. Because when you first hopped onto the project, they didn't have the budget for you
They
yet.
did not have any funding at all.
At which point did you see your first payment from it? Did you pay yourself actually?
Yeah. Yeah, I had to. Well, I haven't paid myself yet.
Right.
Because there's nothing to pay yet.
Right. Oh, distribution.
Because
Got
later
it.
on, you have to recoup first all the production budget.
Correct.
Before you start paying all the deferred payments.
Correct. Wow. Okay. Well, going back to production.
Yes.
At which point did you know that you reached the shooting draft, that this was ready to go?
I made myself a deadline because there are a lot of factors that comes into play. Like my line producers have other projects that they'll be doing towards the second half of the year, and then at the same time I am in the ABC program, so I can't be staying in the Philippines that long.
This was happening while you were still part of that.
Yes.
Wow.
So I'm doing double duty, and then my DP and my sound recordist. My DP comes from New York, Filipino American.
Oh, Clarissa
de los Reyes.
Yep.
And then my sound recordist, Shiho Miyazawa, is from Japan.
Sure.
So, and they have their own work. They have their own life. So I need to make sure that I book them. I get to the Philippines. This is a timeline. I need to finish it this time. So I basically gave myself a timeline because prior to shooting Toto, I was a shadowing director for a TV show for an episode because of the program that I was part of. 2 weeks after I left, went to the Philippines, did my pre-production for 1 month.
Okay.
1 to 2 months. Yeah, of pre-production that includes location scouting, casting, finalizing the script and everything. So
it's super fast paced here.
it's very fast paced. 2 months of pre-production, which is equivalent to a pre-production for a pilot. And then I shot it for 17 shooting days.
Okay.
And then from there, I went to post. My post also took 2 months. So I pretty much did the film in 5 to 6 months.
That's really impressive. I mean, just based off of what I've been hearing from a lot of people's stories. But then again, Filipino production is just super fast paced in general. You might even be slow compared to the indies here.
Well, the thing is, it's not slow in the sense that I think it's slow in the sense of the number of shooting days.
Yes.
But you gotta also consider the fact that most of the films here, most of the independent filmmakers make their films their shooting turnaround is 24 hours.
Yeah.
Or
Oh my
22
God.
hours.
Yeah.
So, and that goes straight on.
Yeah.
And I tried as much as possible not to do that because somebody who comes from the US, my DP and my sound are not from the Philippines, and also I think just the fact that if you want to be a reasonable human being,
Yeah.
you need to
Oh yeah.
you need to consider the welfare of your crew because there's a law of diminishing return.
Mm-hmm.
People can only work for so much. So I try to make sure it's not a 12-hour turnaround like in the US because I won't have that luxury. It's more a 16-hour shooting day, 16 to 17 hours. Granted, we had 1 or 2 days that went to 20 hours.
Sure.
But then again, I made sure that the next day is a day break. It's a day off. So that's why it's extended all the way to 17 shooting days. In terms of post, the only reason I was able to finish it that fast, one, my editor is like one of the most seasoned editors, most awarded and recognized editor in the Philippines. So that's a plus. She already knows how things are work. And then two, because I know my timeline, I know that I need to be back by 4th of July. Granted, like I started in February, and I know I need to be back by 4th of July. So I worked my way backward. So with my post team, who's so organized, they were actually already editing the film while I was shooting. So every 3 days, I would get an assembly, and then look into it and see if it's working. Okay, it's working or not. And then, but most of the time it's working because I already plotted it, knowing like what my shot is, all that stuff. So that's how I was able to like just polish, finish my director's cut within 1 month, and then my final cut and everything, picture lock it within 1 month, and then go send it to online and do the audio post.
From the sounds of it, I have to commend you on. You seem to have a very strong organizational ethic and discipline, and I'm sure that comes from your years of experience in those various roles and knowing how all parts operate.
Yeah, I would commend my mom for always telling me for telling me like, if you want to be the boss, you need to know all the aspects of like the business. So you gotta learn and like get your feet wet. So that's what I did. Like it took me a while to make a first feature. Usually other people nowadays make their first feature when they're in their 20s, early 30s. It took me a while, but looking back, I'm like, I won't be able to like make this kind of feature in this short amount of time had I not experienced all the other jobs, like all the craft, doing all those as an editor, as a shooter, as as a grip, as a gaffer.
Wow.
Understanding those allowed me to have a better understanding of like how the whole machinery works and work within those limitations.
Yeah, I think it's really crucial that we got that bigger picture here. Especially nowadays with like social media, we love hearing about the so-called like overnight success and debunking the overnight success and being like, wait, hold on, this person for years was doing this, and that end up equating to that. All right, so the film takes I think you said 2 months in post-production.
1 month to picture lock it, and then another month for online, for audio post, for scoring, and then done.
Was your schedule at all adhering to any festival deadlines? Was that a big part of it, or?
To be honest, like when I made this film, my job was to be a director, a writer, and one of the producers. And my producing work was supposed to be mainly during the production. So I had my other 2 producers who were supposed to plan out the festival strategy and all that. So on my end, it was not in my radar when I was working on it because I was the director. But in hindsight, I think every director who makes their film and targets the festival circuit needs to consider what festivals they are eyeing, what's their priority, because that will set the timeline for their production as well. Because you wouldn't want to be doing a film and waiting for another year to get to Cannes, to get to Venice, to get to Berlin. So you gotta be realistic as well, like of like what your timeline is. And for me, the disadvantage was like not looking at it in that manner. So we were skirting between like the extended deadline for Toronto and like we already passed this deadline for Berlin. So there were a lot of deadlines that were passing that we could have entered, and also like identifying the personality of your film and what festival would want this type of film. Everyone says that all the major festivals like are just open for new voices and all that, but the reality is every festival has a personality.
Yes.
Every festival looks for certain types of films. You know, consciously or subconsciously, programmers look for certain types of film. Berlin's films are very different from the Venice films.
Yeah.
Are very different from the Cannes film. Are very different from the Tokyo International Film Festival film, from the Hong Kong International Film Festival, from Busan, or to Carlo Vivari, to Locarno.
And all of those are way different than Sundance.
Very different from Sundance as well, and very different from New York Film Festival. So one has to like identify, is my film the type that Sundance would take? Is my film the type of film that Cannes would appreciate? Because even in Cannes, there are different subsections. There's the competition, uncertain regard, director's fortnight, critics week.
Yeah.
So every section has their own personality as well. So, and in Berlin it's the same thing: panorama, competition, forum. So they have their own personality. So you have to figure out those things. It's the responsibility of the filmmaker to know that.
Right. This is good because I was curious to know at which point did you even have an audience strategy? Because this is a Filipino film, you know, it's shot in the Philippines. It's half English, half Tagalog, but it's certainly for a Western audience as well. So at which point did you identify that, actually?
I knew early on that it's a film that I want to attract both the Filipino audience and the North American audience, because that's North America. That's where I'm from now. I'm based in North America, and I know the sensibility of North Americans. In terms of like a film that will go to Europe, that's a different story, because I was hoping that it gets to one of the major festivals in Europe, but the reality is, and these festivals might hate me for saying this, but if it's a film coming from a third world country, usually they take films that basically exoticizes like poverty and all those kind of stuff.
Yes.
So, and with that,
yours wasn't quite.
Yeah, mine wasn't, because I am very against that, because I feel like it affects the image of Filipinos abroad.
Absolutely.
I remember somebody asking me before, after them seeing a Filipino film, I'm like, do you also live in a treehouse like that? Like, do I look like I live in a treehouse like that?
Oh man.
So,
yeah.
Not to sound condescending, but like, you know, that there is a responsibility that comes with making films. There is a responsibility for festivals as well, to see like how this can affect this people, this race.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware of that, being an overseas Filipino. You know, a Filipino immigrant abroad. I see that. It affects me. It affects people that I know.
Thanks for saying that, because I really think many people like myself shared those sentiments, of course. And I do see a more diverse Philippine indie scene coming up. So I am looking forward to the next few years, but it's important that, you know, we have this recorded, you know, and like that this message gets out there. And I'm sure other countries find themselves in like a similar situation too, where perhaps they're pigeonholed, and just again like striving for diverse cinema, not even within just the global spectrum, but on a more micro spectrum, like per country.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that said, yeah, take us further into the distribution timeline. At which point did you get there from the festivals?
The first, like in the Philippines, it had a distribution already, so that was the first stage for me because this is my turf. So I was able to like find connections through my producers as well, my local producers, to be clear.
And at which point was this? Were you guaranteed a local like a domestic release from the start, or this was after you wrapped?
Well, because of what happened during that festival, where the local festival, we were supposed to be guaranteed 14 days, screening days, something like that, I believe. But that was the year when all the fiasco with the festival happened, and then there was a change of guards. They did not honor the price anymore and all that, so it just everything, the course that just changed, and like I had to redraw the plan for like how to get a distribution in the Philippines. And luckily we got distribution in the Philippines, and then internationally, I think the first signs of like getting a distribution what happened after the Asian American International Film Festival. When it won the Audience Award, that's when I got calls. Because I had friends who were critics for Indian cinema and all that, and they knew people, and then they referred my film, they sent the links to my film, and then that's when I got meetings in LA and New York and all that. And then I started getting offers through that, and then I went to Hong Kong Film Market, I went to Cannes, to find more potential like buyers and distributors, and I was able to get more offers after that.
No way.
So
you were letting some of these offers sit, or they didn't really attract you, the initial ones before you
I
went
was
to the
like
market?
on the fence. I wasn't sure yet. Because like I am new to the game, so I am trying to test the waters and feel what's going on in the marketplace. And at the same time, I was reaching out to my more seasoned producers, that I eventually met afterwards, and directors who has mentored me in LA, and asked them for advice. So that's why I had to wait a little bit more. And then lately, like the one who sold my short film.
Oh, your short film got distribution.
Yeah, my short film got another, like a second wave of distribution.
No.
Like it's funny, like that film, that won the DJA, that was a film that was a gift that keeps on giving to me.
No, you never hear about that, but that's...
Yeah, so
wow,
it got
congrats.
a distribution first, it got acquired by PBS, and then 2 years after, this distributor saw my film, got to sell it again, so now it's playing in Europe and Africa and the rest of North America. And then that same sales company just contacted me and wanted to sell my feature film. So
when was this?
just recently
Wow.
they asked. I'm like, and given the track record that I've had with them, so obviously I go with them.
Wow. Okay. So you were pretty conservative, you're hearing out a lot of offers, and I think this dials back again to like the whole idea of mentorship, or just trusting, seasoned peers and their opinions. So at first I would say you're perhaps like taking risks, but at the same time I'm sure you felt confident hearing other people weigh in.
Yeah, because although I've been in the industry for a long time, but in the feature film world, I'm still a novice. So, and I'm well aware of that, and I'm well aware of my shortcomings. So I try to reach out everyone I know, because there was a deal, there's an offer, sounds very attractive, but something about it, it just made me feel like there's something off about this one. I feel like I want to take this because it looks attractive, but there's something off.
Yeah.
So I put it on hold, and then I did more research, and I dug up more information about this company and about the other companies that made an offer. And in the end, I wanted to go with this other company because at least I had a good relationship already, a tangible proof of what they can and cannot deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day that you need to figure that out. And also, I know that for any first-time feature filmmakers, they would always want a theatrical release in anywhere, North America especially. But nowadays, everything's going digital.
Yeah.
And for a film that's been around for a while, the reality is, if it's a small film, you gotta weigh on like the cost of like doing theatrical and doing digital. I followed some of my friends' advice and like just go with the digital route, because like the cost of like doing the theatrical and then the digital is just doesn't make sense, especially if I'm like already doing all the work of like the producing aspect of it. And so, and I want to move on to my next project. But what I learned in this process too, and attending all the markets, is that to make sure that you already have a sales agent before you even get into the festival circuit. Everything was a learning experience for me. This feature film, although craft wise, I guess like you can say that it's well made, but on the other aspects, especially on the producing aspect, I'm new, so there's a lot of stumbles along the way, and I'm not shy to say that, because like I'd rather experience it now than later on. So
I mean, that's what this podcast is all about too, and let's just recap, where exactly are we at with distribution, and what are we gonna expect in the near future?
So I believe like for North America, at least for North America, probably expect the film next year.
Okay.
Next year in digital platforms. Next year being 2018.
Right.
Yeah. Expect the film Toto in digital platform in 2018.
Sweet.
Like, at the very least in North America, but hopefully also in Europe and Africa and the rest of Asia.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, transitioning from this film into the other projects, why don't you give us a preview of what's coming up next?
I am actually working on my next project now. It'll be my first all English language film, first American film about Filipino American family set in the East Coast. It's a story about a queer kid who needs to prove that he can be a superhero to his family.
And when did you start writing this one?
The script I started writing in July.
Okay, yeah.
Working on like my third draft now. So it was a fast turnaround because like I had to rush it for the Berlinale Talents Tokyo.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true.
Last November 2017.
Yeah. I'll ask you a pretty typical question, but besides that film, where do you find yourself now compared to where you were in 2014?
I feel more educated, more well-rounded as a filmmaker, I guess. Of course, more mature. Yeah, it was good because like that film basically like pushed me to stretch myself, to learn more about the film festival circuit, to know more about the North American audience, and to know more about the Philippine audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good luck on that project. I super look forward to hearing about it and potentially like talking more about it in person, because we're both gonna be back in the States.
Yes.
When do you plan to shoot it?
Hopefully like late 2018 or early 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, keep me posted, and we're gonna transition right now into the final segment, which I call Take a Break, where each of us recommends one thing. It could be an activity or a piece of media, what have you, that helped you get out of writer's block or any creative stress.
Oh, okay. Oh, I do that a lot. I work out a lot. Okay. Usually my schedule is I start writing around 5 or 6 in the morning, and then I take a break like around mid-afternoon, and then I go work out.
Yeah.
So usually that's what I do.
How many times a week?
5 times a week.
Wow, so you're really in it.
Yeah, 5-6 times a week.
Yeah.
I do that. I work out. I swim. But for writer's block, sometimes working out works. Other times, when I'm writing, I try to listen to music. I try to find the music that would suit well to the scene, and like listen to it and like find the rhythm of the scene and like find the right and start writing based on that. And once in a while, I go on a late night movie night and just watch a film just to get me out. And when you're a filmmaker, instinctively you start breaking down the film while you're watching it.
Yes.
And most of the time, it actually helps in like dissecting your own film, dissecting whatever you're writing, and yeah, it's mostly for the writing stuff.
You know, even in terms of like working out, I think just the basic idea of like a physical activity. So my take a break recommendation is actually having a casual conversation, but like an in-person conversation. So if you live in a walking city like myself or like you did for a long time in New York, and I'm also using this to kind of immortalize my go-to cafe, which tragically, as most things in New York City, has concluded its I think 5 years of business. It's called Fair Folks and a Goat. It was on Houston in Greenwich Village. You might have...
Yeah. I think I've been there before. Yeah.
So they were actually a coffee subscription wherein you had to pay monthly and you just got unlimited drinks. Like you could even get iced tea or whatever. So you just roll in and you just have to finish your cup. So you can't obviously double fist. So one drink at a time. And what that created was a community. And, you know, the whole concept was to make it like Cheers, where everybody knows your name, and that's how it was. And so since I lived walking distance from them, if ever I was, and you know, I work from home a lot, I'm full freelance, I'm editing a lot too. And sometimes if I'm sick of my apartment, I'm going to go on that walk. So you do get the exercise. And then I'm going to go up to the barista who I know, and we're just going to talk about whatever, you know. And I think part of my 2018 New Year's resolution is, okay, what's my next cafe spot? Because I need to find one, and I need to befriend the baristas ASAP.
Yeah, that's actually good, because like for me, like whenever I have like writer's block and like trying to figure out like what's wrong with my script or what's missing, usually I'm fortunate to have like 2 filmmaker friends who are also writers. I have a lot of writer friends, but like these 2 constant people who I pitch my project to. Like, I mean, like pitch my scenes, and they would tell me, they would help me break down the scene, break down the idea, if it's working or not. Because I also do that to them. I help them with their structure. I help them with their writing too. And also living in LA, the beauty of living in LA for me is that when I take my break, if I can't write, I drive by the canyon. So while I'm driving by the canyon, I drive by the canyon, and like I talk to myself in the car while listening to the music until I get to the gym. Yeah. And so by then I'm like, aha!
So basically, by going to the gym, you would have fulfilled like 5 different take a break activities and forgotten all about your stress.
Yes.
Yeah. Lesson of the story, just go somewhere.
Yeah, just go somewhere and like just, you know, get yourself more active and just distracted with something else and just like let your senses meander for a while, and then you go back to that whole thing, to your project, and hopefully you'll get a new perspective.
Yeah. And hopefully you get to use this podcast as your little distraction too. So on that note, can we tell everyone how can they keep posted on you and Toto and whatever?
I have my website, www.johnpaulsu.com. You can follow me on Twitter at jpsu. For Instagram, it's jp_su.
So again, please keep us posted on Toto and this upcoming project you got.
Thank you.
And with that said, thank you everyone so much for listening to the 3rd episode of The Small Break. Remember, you can find us on iTunes and wherever you find your podcasts. This episode was recorded and hosted by yours truly, Paulo Vitanga, edited by Dennis Hu, and produced by 8Player Pictures. You can find our stuff at 8player.com. That's the number 8-player.com. The music you're listening to right now is by a band called MFA. And if you'd like to keep up with us and myself, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PawiFiction. That's Pawi Fiction. And if you know anyone who would be into this podcast, and more especially someone who might want to star in a future episode, remember, we're looking for people who have just written, produced, and found distribution for their first feature films. Please send me a message, or you can email us through the 8Player website. We'd love to hear back from you. And remember, leave us a rating on iTunes, please. It would really help us. So stay tuned. We have even more interviews lined up for 2018. And with that, I want to wish you a promising and fruitful start to the new year. Thank you, coming from Manila, where we say, maraming salamat po.